I don't know. Say it with me. I don't know. Good God, it is liberating. I am a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know. We're taught to believe that everything has a reason. And so we observe the world, we see what happened, and then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened. But I think a lot of the time we end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something. This is why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people. They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values that there's just no untying it. And maybe unsurprisingly, in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends. Maybe even ask them about that thing that they've created, because to them, it's immensely valuable. The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside of ourselves, is a lie that we tell to ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity. We have no other choice. We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct. But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that is definitely true, the truest thing I can say, which is that I don't know.
Never know.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
Welcome everyone to episode 154 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, Dr. Bob Pondillo and I interviewed Jenna. Jenna is a 32-year-old software engineer living and working in New York City. She graduated from St. Olaf College with degrees in history and English, but transitioned into software development after the recession. Jenna grew up in a non-denominational, charismatic Christian household. From an early age, she was fully immersed in the world of Christian school and Christian culture. She describes herself as having spent every moment trying to be a better follower of Jesus. Asking Jesus into her heart at age 3, reading the whole Bible as a young teen, memorizing scripture, praying, being active in the youth group. But as she came into adulthood, Jenna went through an experience with clinical depression that led her to question everything. I'd like to talk a little about love. There was a Facebook thread recently that stirred up some questions about love, and it was on a secret site, so I won't mention any names. Self-love, romantic love, friend love, familial love, all can be difficult, complicated endeavors. But it was pointed out that for ex-Christians, unlearning and learning anew what love is, outside the overarching notion in the Bible that God is love, it can be difficult and, in fact, may involve the remapping of our brains at the subconscious level. Agape love was supposed to be the unselfish, unconditional love modeled by God. But the Bible contradicts this notion over and over again. So some of us were left with a mess to clean up, emotionally and mentally, around this notion of love. Atheist and psychoanalyst Erich Fromm first used the expression unconditional love in 1934. He later developed it in his highly successful book, The Art of Loving, in 1956. Fromm presents love as a skill that can be taught and developed. He rejects the idea of loving as something magical and mysterious that cannot be analyzed and explained, and he's therefore skeptical about popular ideas such as falling in love or being helpless in the face of love. Facebook friend and guest of this podcast in a few weeks, Brian Peck, wrote this: "Love is amazing and kind of mundane. It's big and transcendent and small and ordinary. It's the pinnacle of human experience and the smallest intention towards another. Love is difficult for so many reasons, and one of those reasons is the chasm between our expectations and the reality of love." Unquote. These ideas align with my own thoughts on love. I see love as a choice. I think the less magical we make it, the less emotional, the more power we wield over it and through it. Fromm taught that because modern humans are alienated from each other and from nature, we seek refuge from our lonesomeness in romantic love and marriage. However, he observed that real love is, quote, not a sentiment which can be easily indulged in by anyone. It is only through developing one's total personality to the capacity of loving one's neighbor with true humility, courage, faith, and discipline that one attains the capacity to experience real love. He considered this a rare achievement. According to Fromm, loving oneself is quite different from arrogance, conceit, and egocentrism. Loving oneself means caring about oneself, taking responsibility for oneself, respecting oneself, and knowing oneself. For example, being realistic and honest about one's strengths and weaknesses. In order to be able to truly love another person, one needs to first love oneself in this way. But for many of us ex-Christians, we ceded those things to God. God would take care of us, and instead of elevating and strengthening ourselves, we were to diminish ourselves, and weakness was a virtue. Hell, slavery was a virtue. Being owned and controlled by God was a mark of maturity in that upside-down world. Fromm's description of true love and intimacy was a willful commitment directed toward another person. I'll say that again. A willful commitment directed toward another person. He thought we could not truly love another person if we did not love all of mankind, including ourselves. This is where I like David Rico's perspective. In his book, How to Be an Adult in Love, he described love by its most basic ingredient, connection. He said love is a nexus that can happen along a wide spectrum, from sending a kind letter to a new acquaintance, to being sexually intimate, to feeling a mystical oneness with all things. And all are an expression of connectedness and love. To me, this kind of love is only accessible to yes-sayers, to those who observe the world, their circumstance, the person sitting right across from them, and they're not crushed by the repulsion that judgment foments, but rather looks right into the duality of all things and acknowledges the beauty and blight of reality, and embraces it, in fact, in its aggregate. Carl Rogers wrote in his book, Way of Being, quote, "People are just as wonderful as sunsets if you let them be. When I look at a sunset, I don't find myself saying, 'Soften the orange a bit on the right-hand corner.' I don't try to control a sunset. I watch with awe as it unfolds." Unquote. So I would add to Rico's emphasis on connectedness, love involves freedom, giving yourself and others permission to just be. Be who you is, 'cause if you ain't who you is who you ain't. Love does not require change before it can love. It either loves the thing or it doesn't. That doesn't mean I love everything about it, but if I don't love the core of it, the essence, I only love the superficialities of it, and those can come and go. Consider that a person's essence is their beehive, for example, and all the busy bees flying around, coming and going, are the manifestations of how that person is showing up at any given time. What they say, what they do, how they smell, what they believe, how they're feeling, their mood, their attitude, etc. If I need that person to perform for me, or fit my wish list of attributes, then I don't love them. I love the thought of them in my head of what they should be. And in so doing, I'm trying to take away their freedom. And love doesn't do that. There's nothing about love that insists we have to love everyone full throttle. Remember, it's a spectrum. I do think that in order for me to be a healthy, loving person, I need to maintain a sense of connectedness toward all things and release everyone to be themselves, barring, of course, criminal behavior. I also don't buy into this notion that love is sacrifice. Compromise, maybe, and consideration of the other, for sure. But because I love them, and maybe even to the degree in which I love them, it will be a delight to do things for them, maybe even make changes in my life, not a sacrifice. So maybe that's just semantics. In conclusion, I agree with Rico and Fromm that loving ourselves is the first step to loving others. It's nothing other than the purpose of our lives. But that doesn't make it easy to do. We may find it a challenge to love ourselves. We may have a hard time letting love in from others, especially if our self-loathing prevents us from believing or trusting or even recognizing the love of another. But to me, this is the most important work of my life. And it is a life's work. I asked our guest today, Jenna, to weigh in on this, and she writes, quote, "I love the idea of love as being sustained connectedness. When I was a Christian, I believed in unconditional love, and I believed that it existed in people and families I knew. We had so many friends who seemed like the perfect Christian families. They never shouted, never fought, never cursed. They had screw-ups, but they were always there for each other. My adult, non-Christian world is a lot more complicated. Looking back on those perfect Christian families, I see how often one person sacrificed themselves to make that perfect family possible. In the name of love, either the husband or the wife willingly played a secondary role to the other in every area of life. They gave up their names, their lives, their dreams sometimes, often their spirit, in order to create that perfect harmony. And there's something to be said for that, but also, ugh. Too often we mistake love for lack of conflict, and lack of conflict is oppression, and the antithesis to intimacy. That's why raising kids who are never allowed to say no to the parent is oppressive. It doesn't create a bonded family, just a house full of walled-off people, a troop of soldiers who say yes, sir, all day, and then go back to their bunks to be lonely. Unquote. We taped this conversation on May 6th, 2017. We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight, not by faith. Subscribe to our podcast or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, you can support us monetarily in 2 easy ways. You can pledge $1 per episode or more through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast. Or you can leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated. Our opening monologue is an excerpt from a YouTube by Hank Green, titled Towering Mountain of Ignorance. The music behind it is Never Know by Jack Johnson. The segue music on this episode was performed on a handpan by Sam Mayer in the New York City subway. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is.
Hello.
Hey, Bob. How's it going?
Hey, is it Ginna or Gina?
It's Jenna.
Jenna! Hello. How are you? Good to have you.
Good. Great to talk to you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
So, Jenna, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York.
Hey, how about that? I have friends in Brooklyn.
Are you from there, or what brings you there?
Oh, no. I'm from Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Okay.
Oh, what brought you up to New York?
Well, I needed a job. I graduated right before shit hit the fan with the recession in 2008. And so came to New York for a job.
No kidding.
What do you do?
Well, at the time I was working in nonprofit, like doing grant writing and basically an administrative assistant. But now I'm a software engineer.
Software engineer. Okay.
Does that fit with your undergraduate major? Or
I was a liberal arts person. I was an English history kind of major. So.
Wow.
So you're in Brooklyn, and if you don't mind my asking, how old are you?
I'm 32.
Okay. You married?
Not married.
All right. I can't remember if you contacted me or if I found you. How'd we meet up?
I wrote you a note, maybe with a couple of thoughts on one of the guests, I think, or one of the conversations. And you said, why don't you come on the show?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I kind of do that with everybody, but just about, actually, if you can put together a sentence or two on a email, I know that you're a communicator. And especially now that we know you're an English major.
Yeah, you probably should be.
Yeah, so,
absolutely.
And I think, you've listened to a few episodes of our show?
I have. I've listened to, I don't know, a lot, maybe like 50 episodes.
Okay, great.
Oh.
Well, you know what kind of vibe we have. And I mean, we pride ourselves in talking to people that aren't famous because we think everybody's story is unique and truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, and they are. So
Every time.
so it seems. So maybe we should start where we usually start, about where you what is your religious background?
I grew up non-denominational Christian.
Which still means Christian, strangely enough. Non-denominational.
Yeah, it's
always
just not associated with a denomination.
Yeah, but it's still, biblically based and doctrinal and all that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
If anything, we consider ourselves more so.
Yeah.
That's right. You're more right.
Well, anytime that somebody branches off and creates another sect,
Yeah.
they're doing so because they think they're taking the high road.
Yeah, they got it. They know it. They got the right one.
There's
now.
some kind of disgruntled position with the current status quo.
Yeah,
so
right.
we've got to up the game, and we started.
And it's usually some little pee-pee shit thing that is nothing, and they make a big deal out of it.
Did you say pee-pee shit?
Well, yes, I'm talking like my mother now.
But you were holding up your fingers like the size of a pea, right? Is that what the pee-pee shit
And
means?
that's what she would say. Now, quit that pee-pee shit and go over there. Do your own wash, So, but anyway, they're usually tiny little doctrinal things that they come up with. They say, well, that's not right. That's not what he meant, and
Right.
and then build a whole congregation around it.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So, Jenna, you were saturated in it as a child, or what?
Yeah, so actually my parents were kind of part of the Jesus movement in the 70s.
Okay.
And so they left what they considered sort of a very traditional and vanilla, like hymn singing church thing, and went to churches that had rock bands and spoke in tongues and, literal Bible believing. Cass, you probably recognize a lot of the things I grew up with, like Adventures in Odyssey. And
Oh, yeah.
Whoa, what's this now?
Okay.
This is a new one.
All right.
Tell me about this.
Okay, so Adventures in Odyssey is a children's video series. I mean, it's just basically Christian cartoons for kids.
Okay.
But we raised our kids on Adventures in Odyssey. And it sounds like...
Radio. I'm from the older generation.
Yeah, it was on Christian radio. That's right. But we ended up buying the cassettes or something.
Okay.
We could play it.
Adventures in what?
In Odyssey.
In Odyssey. What the hell is that?
Well,
mean?
Odyssey was a fictitious little town.
Oh, I see. In Odyssey. So
Yeah,
it was,
so
it was
the
a
adventures
noun.
of these various fictional characters. And
And it was all about Jesus and
well, it was
and all that
it was
stuff.
about life. It was about Christian morals, and it was put out by Focus on the Family.
Oh dear. Oh my. Okay.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about Focus on the Family and James Dobson is, had he not been tainted by dogma, he really is a PhD child psychologist.
Okay.
And there is some good shit there.
Okay.
You just have to sift it. And, I don't know. What do you think, Jenna?
I have some different thoughts on kind of the whole Christian upbringing philosophy that I think he contributed to.
Okay. Go, let's hear
But
them.
maybe we could get into that later.
No, let's get into it.
I think let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
All right. So I grew up with kind of two paradoxes, both kind of encouraged by the church. One is like, you have to grow up immediately.
Huh.
And so like morals apply to you regardless of what age you're at or your developmental milestones.
Okay.
People say if you're angry at someone, you might as well have killed them in your heart. Well, that also applies if you're like 2 years old.
Okay.
Boy.
So that's Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, that if you have called somebody a fool, or for some reason they use the word raka, which I think was Greek for
a rucka
fool.
for a fool? Okay.
Then
Raise a rucka.
Then you've committed murder. I mean, you kind of wish they would go away, And, it was just, Sermon on the Mount was all about drilling down and making everyone guilty. Because if you thought you were a good person, that's what he was basically doing, is you think you got a leg to stand on, I'm here to take your legs out.
But is it true what Jenna is saying? Do they actually think like a 4-year-old knows what the hell's going on? Like, why
I don't know.
would
What do you think, Jenna?
Well, so James Dobson, when I was growing up, he even advocated for like, there's times when you could spank babies.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes babies are being rebellious, and that's sin, and sin is punishable by hell, and you should train them by spanking them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
The corporal punishment is?
Oh, yeah.
Slap them around a little bit.
Well, the Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah. I know, but still, you don't want to. I mean, you're a fucking man or a woman. Why would you want to beat up a little kid? What's the point? I know they piss you off. I get that. But I mean, that's okay. All right, I'll calm down. Okay.
But kids are kind of like little savages, right? And you're trying to train them up into something totally different. So kids are sort of like, I don't know, kids are almost like embattled ground because you're trying to like bring them over to the light side.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's interesting, though, that the perspective is the predisposition or the default perspective of humanity is savage. And so the Christian agenda could be to squeeze the savage out of them, or beat the savage out of them. Or,
Really?
I don't know. I'm trying to get back inside the head of that.
Well, I was slapped around by my dad, so
Yeah.
not my mom, but my dad was with the guy with the belt and a radiator.
We used a
cover,
wooden
so.
spoon.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't hurt me none. Maybe it did. Clearly, something happened that wasn't good. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, actually, the history major in me wants to pipe up here because this was a big thing for the Victorians, and this was why part of like imperialism is like everyone is savage, and it's all about taming the savages, and that kind of like went into child rearing as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and so in a way, Christianity has just preserved that from the past. It's not like a new idea.
Right.
I see. And I've often said that. I mean, I think I don't know. I think etiquette was established to differentiate ourselves from the savages.
Yeah.
Like what fork to use, and things like
don't eat
that.
with your hands.
Hold your pinky out on the teacup or whatever. I don't know. But there is this inbred in humanity, and then it's certainly augmented by Christianity, is a distaste and a disdain for what it means to be human.
And that's actually kind of the paradox is like on one side, it's like grow up immediately because morals apply to you no matter what age you are. And on the other side, it's like your instincts and needs are terrible. So in a way, you can never grow up because you're suppressing like the parts that are most you about you.
I totally agree. I think this is a giant paradox, and it's worth pointing out, is I think that Christianity keeps people in the form of like infantilism, like it's a perpetual immaturity.
Yes.
Mostly because of you're not responsible, really. It's strange because you're accountable for your sin. I mean, these are paradoxes. I mean, that's what we're stumbling onto. And they're cognitive dissonance. You're responsible for your sins, but yet when it comes to... Actually, you're not, because you cast your sins onto the scapegoat. And then all you got to do is, ask forgiveness and you're washed of it. When in fact, the person you sinned against might still be needing some reconciliation, but because you've made right with God, then you can feel that you've washed your hands of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so this is actually a big topic I kind of wanted to go into with you guys.
Yeah, go.
I made like a whole list of ways that I think Christianity kind of keeps you infantile, like you said, Cass.
Okay.
Like one thing I've been learning about is one of the developmental stages you need to hit is lying, which usually hit between like 5 and 7 or so.
Lying?
Yeah.
Lying.
Dishonesty.
So you lied to your parents?
It's actually a stage because you need to feel like your thoughts are your thoughts, and you want to know if other people can know what you're thinking or not. And so lying helps you actually like become a separate person from the infant that is sort of merged with your parents.
I see.
And it's around 5 to 7 years old that they try their wings at it, and they say something.
The individuation part of it.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure it's like, did you do your homework? Yeah.
Well, at 5, you don't have homework, though.
Okay. Well, what's a good...
Kindergarten. I know myself personally, there was a stage in my life where I didn't like bacon, but it's mostly overcooked bacon. I didn't like overcooked bacon.
Okay.
And so, but for some reason, my mom and dad wanted me to, make a happy plate, clean your plate.
Yeah, sure.
And I would put it in my pocket, and I would take it up to my bedroom, and I would put it under my bed. And eventually, my mom finds this giant stash of dried, hard bacon under my bed.
Funny.
But I was exercising lying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
I couldn't even think of stuff like that. Wow.
The bacon stash.
The bacon under the bed. Under the bed, though, of all places.
As if that's,
Oh, that's where the monsters live, so maybe they'll...
I'm feeding the monster.
Okay, so where were we? Sorry.
Another thing that's really troubling, and I think actually Neil Carter has gone into this a couple times, is just lack of boundaries. So when you're a kid, it's not just about being a good kid. It's also like your thoughts and feelings could be wrong. And so there's constantly like monitoring of your thoughts and feelings to see if they're wrong.
Okay.
Again, that kind of keeps you from feeling like a separate person because you just feel like either like God or your conscience or your parents is like always kind of in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Thought police.
Totally.
Yeah, watching.
I remember like being sad was wrong because I wasn't having faith in God.
Right.
Or like being angry was wrong because I was rebelling. And just like after a while, you're just in an emotional straitjacket where like happy is okay, and that's about it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, there's a couple of things come to mind. I know this is something that is very poignant right now in the culture, and it has a lot to do with feminism, but that's when you say to a person, smile.
Oh, right.
And I think historically we got away with that, but today that's offensive. Like, don't tell me to smile.
Yeah.
But I can see where what Jen is talking about is Christian parents, if they saw that their kid was melancholy, instead of letting them be and have their authentic, genuine feelings, you're told to, feel differently.
Right.
As if.
Yeah, like I do it like that.
Flip a switch.
Yeah, right.
But just telling somebody, smile. You're supposed to be joyful. The joy of the Lord's your strength, and you're going to miss out on the strength of the Lord if you wallow in your...
If you have resting bitch face.
Well, yeah. And actually, my oldest daughter does have resting bitch face, or at least,
Now, that means, that when you're not smiling or you're just being yourself, it looks like you're mad or something, right?
Yeah, and there's a natural scowl in my family. Like, I have it and Mindy has it, so our kids are doomed to have it,
A scowl?
Well, like when our brow, if we're thinking or, something like we both have really thick eyebrows. Anyway, this is getting down a path, but
so I get you.
So there's this demand to smile or be happy, and then the second one was anger, and the Bible says be angry but sin not, or it's okay to be angry but just don't sin. I'm just throwing that out. But there is maybe a pressure to conform to the right emotions. Like, if you're sad, that's not right. If you're angry, that's not right. And you need to get right, and you need to get right soon. As opposed to letting a kid work through it or whatever. I don't know.
Is that just ask him, what's the matter?
Yeah, just ask him. What do you think, Jenna?
I don't know.
Like, do you remember Cass, don't let the sun go down on your anger?
Oh, my God. My wife and I, we totally lived by that.
Wasn't that an Elton John song? I'm sorry.
And so the next day you wake up and you're still mad, and nothing has been addressed except I'm sorry, it's okay, but...
Yeah, well, Christians are famous for sweeping things under the rug. I mean, that's what scapegoatism does to your mind, is that we can just sweep this under the rug, let's not talk about it, let's move on. And pretending is a habit in Christianity. I mean, you're pretending that God exists, right? And... right from the from the top down.
There's too many rules, man. There's just too many. I couldn't do it. It's just too unreal. It's too. You know what I'm saying?
No, I totally know what you're saying, because this is the task, and I know that a lot of people have expressed, even on the support group websites of Life After God or Everyone's Agnostic. The community of ex-Christians have expressed over and over again. Free at last, free at last.
Yeah. I mean, what?
Well, because there's such a standard. I mean, there is almost like this prototype human, perfect. Oh, it's just Jesus.
Yeah, right.
And you're supposed to be like Jesus, who's the perfect prototype of what a human is supposed to be like. And any variation from that is not only sin, it's rebellion. It's you. Oh, you've got the Holy Spirit within you. And if you'll just align with the power of God within you, then you will become empowered. You're like basically a powered robot.
Right.
Or what is it when somebody's a carrier, or, when if an alien gets inside you, in this case the Holy Spirit gets inside you, then you're a vessel of that creature. And you're now possessed.
Wow. You're it's alien, man.
Right.
Wow.
And you remember when
out your chest,
one of those Stephen King things where he actually played the character where he got filled with cockroaches?
Oh, yeah.
But he's walking around but the cockroaches are actually, he's dead.
Okay.
But the aliens inside him are wiggling his body around. And this is the goal. This is the goal of the Christian, is to be dead and to be a limp puppet
filled with
the Holy Spirit, guided by the Holy Spirit, led by the Holy Spirit. So anyway, I know that what you're expressing, Bob, as far as this is a lot of work.
Oh, man.
It is a lot of work.
What Jenna said, an emotional straitjacket. That's really what it is. You just can't be yourself. You got to second guess and think about, everything, and that's
Right.
too robotic, too
And
toxic.
even the community, which I know we're going to get to, I know it's a big deal for you, Jenna, but one of the things that we've said before that the church has that is hard to get outside the church, and that is community, a place to gather, a time and place to gather, and you miss one another and everything. But one thing that they did wrong with community is that whenever they were together, everybody's in this emotional straitjacket. Everybody's trying to put on a happy face. Everybody's trying to manifest Jesus and joy. You could come in there with all kinds of shit burdened on you, and you're supposed to stuff that. You're supposed to put on a happy face.
My.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressures, and kids start feeling this, and I think this is significant. So
that's the kind of stuff that Jenna's talking about. Then. Yeah.
So boundaries, and again, when I think of boundaries, and I think of somebody who doesn't have the ability or the wherewithal to say no to something that somebody else is wanting them to do. They're just constantly a people pleaser to a fault.
Yeah, other directed.
This is a boundaryless person. And again, Christian children are trained to deny themselves and share their toys and and be kind, and and it's not like it's just some moral standards that we're erecting. God is watching, and the stakes are high.
Yeah, and that way I think you kind of get taught to destroy yourself from the inside. I
agree, yeah.
Your parents can't control every thought you have, but God sees it.
Yeah, it's what Hitch calls celestial dictatorship.
Oh, celestial dictatorship.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
sounds like The Circle. Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Oh, well, it's not very good, but it's the one with Tom Hanks, and it's little cameras are placed everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere in the culture, always watching, constantly monitoring, always watching.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor for God, always watching, and you can't do anything.
So this list, so far we've got lying 5 to 7 years. We got a stage of boundaries, or at least the lack of boundaries. What's next?
Sure. One thing that's really important for kids is to have a secure bond and to feel like your parents are always going to be there for you and take care of you, especially when, you're pretty helpless, which is most of your childhood. So I remember being pretty young and learning that about the rapture.
Oh.
Your parents might disappear in a moment. And if you screwed up that day and didn't ask for forgiveness yet, you're going to be in the house by yourself.
Left behind.
Yeah.
Left behind.
Wow. Talk about the anxiety that this could raise in a kid. I could really fuck you up, Just be afraid all the time, always afraid, never know what's going to happen. And I hate that. It's unnecessary, but yes, go on.
I remember I asked my mom, do you think Jesus will come back, before I'm an adult? Or, and she was like, I hope so. I think Jesus is coming really soon, but I don't know when exactly.
And of course, you were a kid, so you couldn't say, well, hey, it's been 2,000 years. How much longer? Give me a break. But okay. So he's coming back. And that doesn't salve, though. That doesn't make it feel any better.
No, that's worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of think great, but then you kind of also think what if I'm a bad person and my parents, of course, are the good people and they're gone and I'm here by myself, or they're in heaven and I'm not in heaven.
Okay, we're starting to get, and I hope we are starting to get really in touch with the picture that we're painting here, because you have a 24/7 thought police. Like you said, with the cameras everywhere, and there's nothing I can do or say that God doesn't watch. So this is a paranoia, or at least a paralysis of freedom, like you said, emotional straitjacket. And a kid is feeling this, and a kid is a concrete thinker, so they literally believe it because mom and dad said it, and they're the authorities.
Right.
Secondly, one of the things that Ernest Becker talks about with the denial of death is that, unlike animals, we know we exist, we know we're going to die, and we know that we could die at any time without any notice or warning. And these are horrifying things, and so the terror of death is stuffed and denied by various immortality projects or narratives that gives our lives meaning, to suppress the horror and the paralysis of knowing that. Well, this takes that and brings it to another level as far as rapture and the return of Christ, and how even in the Bible it says no one knows when it's going to happen. In the twinkling of an eye, like a thief in the night.
It will
So
come.
here's a scary metaphor even. Like, what's scarier than a thief coming into your house at night? And yet this is what the Bible writers chose to use as a way to convey to us that Jesus could come at any time, like a thief in the night. So as a child, again, concrete thinker, hearing this, literally every second of every day could be the last. And the heavens part and the trumpet blasts and Jesus comes and takes away his chosen. So we have the paralysis of 24/7 thought police, and that at any moment that thought police could barge in the door and take away my caregivers.
Well, and why? So why isn't this thought of as child abuse?
Well,
I mean, why don't parents go, no, we can't do that to our kids? They're too afraid to, Bernesbecker and all that.
Well, when it's Holy Writ, when it's canonized, and when it's God's word, you don't have the luxury of questioning it. This is how it is, pretty or unpretty, right or wrong, and you get on the right side of God, or you're on the back side of God.
Yeah.
I mean,
So the excuse for telling your kids that is like, it's true, and it would be cruel to not prepare them for reality.
yeah, right.
But there's a lot of things that are true that you don't tell to a 3-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's really not age appropriate to tell that to a child that is like physically and mentally attached to you.
How are we doing on the list? How many more?
I got one more. Okay, so back to the whole need a bond kind of issue. I think because parents in Christianity are kind of police,
Yeah.
you lose the feeling of being on the same team. And it actually, like, I think I wanted to kind of hide what was going on in my life, because whenever I would say, this is what happened today and here's how I felt about it, how I felt or reacted would be wrong.
Right.
And so I just like would tell the good things that happened to me and then sort of feel alone in dealing with the difficult things.
This is a really valid point.
Wow.
One of the things that we don't want to be as friends and lovers and parents is we don't want to be that guy or girl who can't handle the truth. And people withhold things from us because they know we're either going to overreact or we're going to misinterpret, misunderstand. It's going to drive a wedge between us. And so we withhold, knowing that they can't handle the truth. And this type of mindset, the Christian parent mindset, who's afraid of God and afraid of straying outside the favor of God and the laws of God, when a child goes through something in reality, in the real world, where they're experiencing things, their parents are not approachable. And this drives a wedge. It not only becomes us against them, but it's just strangers in the house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible.
Wow. And you had to put up with this then, Jenna, too?
I think that was one of the most difficult things, just feeling very alone and having very real problems. And
nobody to talk to.
Yeah. I mean, it was normal to me to be alone with these problems. And I think that's a big issue when you're like 8 years old and you don't know how to make friends and you have no one to talk to about it.
Yeah. Well, and if those same issues that you've stuffed at 8 years old haven't really been dealt with when you're 25, that's some serious pus.
Yeah.
That's been
I'll say.
festering under the surface, and you're going to have some high therapy bills.
That's for sure.
So do you have any siblings?
I have 2 older brothers.
How did they cope with all this? Are they still Christian?
My oldest brother is not. He's an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
And my second brother is very involved in the evangelical world still.
Mm-hmm. And where do you land?
I don't like the A word.
Yeah.
But I think I'm somewhere in that area.
Sure.
Huh.
Are your parents still alive?
Yes.
Are they together?
Yes.
Are they religious?
Yes.
Okay. What's your relationship? Do they know that you're not a believer?
They know that I don't go to church.
Okay.
I suspect that they sort of figure some level of things out, but I don't really feel compelled to like go into it with them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how long ago did your deconstruction begin?
I'd say it began when I went to college, but I didn't stop going to church until like my mid-20s.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how old did you say you were again?
I'm 32.
32.
Yeah.
So for about less than a decade, you've been taking things apart and sifting and trying to decide what to keep. And then are you in frequent contact with your parents?
Yeah, we talk like once or twice a week.
Okay. Are they back in Virginia?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, Jenna, you don't want to call yourself an atheist, or you don't feel that there's something wrong with that. I get it. So there's some delusion that you hang on to then. Either heaven or hell or God or Jesus or something you know what I mean?
Or deism.
Or deism. It gives you some solace or something. And what is that? Have you pinpointed that?
I certainly think there's aspects of delusion that everyone holds on to, but I more just don't like the term atheist because it's like defining yourself in a relationship to something that's not normal.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah. Well, maybe you're a humanist or something, or another word that feels more comfortable for you.
Yeah, I think a term like that would be more descriptive of me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the whole notions, the notion of hell, the notion of heaven, those things you've kind of put aside?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just wondering about that.
So, yeah, are you a naturalist when it comes to like, when we die, we die?
I assume so. Yeah. I mean, I haven't died yet, but...
Can't say for sure.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to like know what we know and to not know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and so like I can't say like what happens to me after I die, but there's no compelling evidence of anything that would happen to me after I die.
Yeah.
I assume I'm gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way I look at it too.
So are you so you stopped going to church and then you're up there in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
In your circle of friends, do you have relationships with Christians still, or most of your friends atheists, or what's your situation?
Well, I guess let me back up a little bit and talk a little bit about kind of the process that I've been through, because I'm still a little bit, I think, in it, but it's been obviously like over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. In high school, I was like the ultimate people-pleasing, non-emotional Christian person.
Okay.
And then in college, I was involved with InterVarsity, and 1 year I led an outreach Bible study. And by outreach, they mean like find your friends that you don't think are Christians and invite them to this Bible study, and we're going to try to convince them to become Christians.
Yep. Yeah, I too was in InterVarsity in college, and I was involved in outreach Bible studies, and they wanted you, I was encouraged by the InterVarsity leader, they wanted you to stay in the dorm. Like at one point, my roommate and I, who's to this day my best friend, we wanted to get an apartment, and we were both involved in InterVarsity, and the InterVarsity leader talked us out of it, and that we were to be salt and light. You know what those terms are, Bob?
Salt, like the salt of the earth, the normal, the
and Jesus said, "You're the light of the world."
And the light of the world.
Yeah, so the darkness in the dorm needs us. Oh, the lost people in the dorm need us to be present.
Man.
Salt is a preservative in old times, and it was, with no refrigeration, it would make meat last longer,
Sure.
You packed it in salt.
It's all metaphor. Wow.
Right? So the world is sinful, dying, corrupt, debauched, and without us, without the presence of salt and light and Christians in the culture's going to just unravel and go get worse and worse and worse. And so God needs us to be inserted in the world, but not of it, and present in the dorm. And so, those were the outreach Bible studies we did.
Wow.
I understand.
I remember people, it wasn't at a Bible study. It was, I think I mentioned it before. I was in a situation where I was being talked about Jesus, and these two people were saying, all you got to do is accept him as your Lord and Savior.
You're trying to close the deal.
Do it. Say it. And it's like, fuck you, man. I'm out. And it's like, no, I can't do this. Why? I feel very uncomfortable. What are you doing? Those kind of things.
You had way too much agency.
Yeah, I guess so. It just.
But see, this is what.
But I mean, it really is that kind of getting in there, say it, do it. You know,
your eternal soul's going to spend somewhere.
And that's some story you're telling yourself, man. I got a different story, you know.
Right, but their perception is their reality, and they're acting on it. That's their vehemence. I mean, that's their urgency.
I couldn't wait to get out of there.
So, Jenna, you're in high school, and kind of in mentioning Bob's agency and his ability and his boundaries. He drew a boundary that moment. As you're in high school, you've kind of been trained, or if you want to say brainwashed, to be a person that doesn't really have agency, doesn't have boundaries, and you're going through the motions, and you're overachieving. Because your life is centered and driven by performance.
Absolutely, 100%.
And in some ways, that's a good thing. I mean, look how far it took you. That's interesting. I mean, because I know that I have a lot of regrets about my Christianity. I mean, I wish I had never fallen for it. But there are some ways that we benefited from it, and maybe there's that. But I think you could. I think what humanist parents are trying to do these days is, set goals, sure,
and be performance driven, but not because heaven and hell hang in the balance, or
right.
Righteousness and sin and some of these more toxic goals that are piled on to, like, I just want you to make good grades.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, high achieving was fun for me in a way because I really enjoyed learning new things. So it wasn't like some kind of drudgery. I guess I wish if I were kind of going back, I would do more things that I was really interested in instead of things that like colleges would want or whatever.
Sure. What about having a boyfriend or having a like a little schmooch here and there?
Oh, that'd be nice.
So that didn't happen in high school or college even, or?
It didn't. Yeah.
It didn't? Oh, gee. Well, I would think that would be something you'd be interested in.
I was very interested in it, but like the woman never approaches the man. And so if you're not a woman that like elicits that from a man or a boy or whatever, then you don't really go on dates.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole nother aspect. But.
Yeah, I guess so.
Did you make some kind of purity vow or anything?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I had a purity ring. It had like 2 silver hearts that were like intertwined.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was waiting for marriage, like most women that I grew up with.
Sure.
Yeah, but nobody was asking you out.
Right. Yeah. So the purity vow had no effect.
What was the point of that? Exactly.
So you were unpacking your journey, and you kind of went back to high school and then college.
All right. So I was leading an outreach Bible study, and we were talking about, some of the basic tenets of like evangelical Christianity. And I went to St. Olaf College, which it's in Minnesota, and it attracts a lot of like really smart, well-rounded people. A lot of them have religious backgrounds.
Right.
So in the Bible study, I had a couple of realizations. One was the quote heathens that I had invited to the Bible study knew a lot more about this stuff than I did. They knew like about the different writers of the different books and where the books came from. And they just had so much more knowledge. And then 2 was like, I didn't really seem to have it more together than they did. So it started to get ironic that I was telling them how to do things.
Wow, isn't that something? Yeah, those who really care about, understanding deeply and figuring out the social and cultural and all the, historic reasons why these things happen, like why do people behave that way? Where did that come from? The history folks that like that stuff really get into it. They delve much deeper into it, and much deeper than Christians.
Well, I think what Jen is saying is that people are self-educating.
Yeah.
But she got all her education from the outside. Like she was told how to live. She was told who to be. And so you're bumping into people in college that have exercised their own agency in their life and read some things, and you kind of found yourself, like you said, ironically.
Well, you got nothing to say to these people. They're actually teaching you some stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then like one of my best friends was like, I don't want to come anymore.
To your Bible study?
Yeah. I mean, a couple people said that, but when she said that, I was just like, why? Like disappointed. And then like, I kind of had this sinking feeling that I was using people for myself. It like wasn't about them.
Wow.
It was about me feeling like I was making a difference.
Yep.
Sure. And you're told to do that as well. Go out and find, be a
evangelist.
A witness.
Evangelist. A witness. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that just left a really dirty taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
When they left, you could feel I'm not interesting.
Sure. Or like, it was just so obvious that I had nothing to teach them.
Yeah. And then you intuited that this is me appeasing my guilt. And I'm basically just using this group and these people to feel good about myself.
And then I started to see that around me, like, the campus preachers that kind of have the bullhorns and yell at people that they're going to hell. Like, it was just all about them. And that was really hard to stomach.
Yeah.
I think that was like the first pin in the coffin. And then the second one was, and Cassie brought this up a lot recently, I had a really strong experience with depression when I was in college.
Oh.
Well, so what happened was I had moved from Virginia to Minnesota, and I never realized that like the sun sets at like 4:30 in Minnesota in the winter.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more darkness, and I had no idea that I had some kind of seasonal depression. And so I started having this feeling, and it didn't really feel like sadness. It just felt really strange. And I had grown up believing that depressed people were like homeless or on drugs or like not really believing in God's promises. And I believed that like as strongly as I believed in gravity. Like depressed people were not like me. And so it took me so long. And actually, my roommate finally was like, I think you're having depression. And I just had this horrible sinking feeling like I am one of those people. Because I literally did not know one person who admitted that they had depression or admitted that they took medication or...
Yeah, in your Christian subculture.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
I thought I was just this horrible, horrible person or like, what's going on? But I experienced it more as like agitation and I couldn't feel good. Like nothing felt pleasurable to me or there was nothing I looked forward to anymore.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. And so I thought depression was like feeling really sad. And because I didn't feel that, I also didn't think I had depression. But then I realized I had really bad depression. And then, of course, like I couldn't tell anyone.
How long did this go on?
Oh, man. So I went to see like a counselor and a doctor, but I also like deeply, deeply mistrusted them. Because I had been taught that like the medications would like turn you into oatmeal and you would just like sit in a chair for the rest of your life, like staring out a window if you took the medications.
That's funny. I mean, it's not like that at all.
It's like the opposite of that in my experience.
Yeah. So eventually what happened? Did you eventually get on some medication that helped you?
Well, so I felt like I had to like lie to the counselor and the doctor that I saw because I was like terrified that my parents would find out. And like they were the police. So I really didn't want them to find out because like if I had been honest, I would have been like, I want to die. And I didn't want them to force me to take medication or like send me to the hospital. So like I was just like, yeah, I feel tired and can't concentrate on anything. And then I would just lie when they would say like, do you feel like self-harming or do you feel like you want to die or something?
You would just lie. Oh, wow. My gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have really hurt yourself, you know?
I mean, it got like very scary. Like it was to the point where my life felt really surreal and also creepy. Like you feel like fatalistic and like things feel weirdly symbolic. And I say that like not because your emotions are out of whack, but because like physically you'll like get goosebumps at really weird times or like I would see the color red and it would make me think about dying. So it's kind of like, it's like the feeling you get when you watch a horror movie, but it's every day. Like it's your life. Like you are in a horror movie.
Yeah. So whenever a person doesn't trust their own feelings, finds themselves in a world where everybody else is normal and I'm not normal, and yet because I'm not normal, I can't communicate that to the normal people because then they would know that I'm not normal, but I'm not even sure that I'm not normal. But I think I heard recently on some ex-Christian talking about how they might have even had trouble, understanding or realizing that they even existed. Did you ever feel like that, Jenna?
Maybe not in those words.
Yeah.
Huh. And you're not talking in a philosophical sense, existence. You're talking about the actual physical feeling of presence. Like
I don't know. But when the world is supposed to be a certain way, this is what Jenna was trained to believe.
Right.
And then she bumps into a world that is not that.
Right.
Then you can question what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I don't know.
I certainly questioned both my version of reality, like, am I having this experience because I'm a bad person?
Mm-hmm.
But also during that time, I was like screaming to God, like, please, some relief, please, like some comfort, or like not even a sign, but just some feeling like things are gonna get better, or like, and then like later it was just like, please let me die.
Wow. Did you ever feel like you had demons?
No, I didn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a relief.
Yeah.
But I started to get scared to go to sleep because I would have nightmares when I would be asleep. And then like, I would be scared to get up because I was like in mental torment. So it was like very, very difficult time.
Yeah. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
What were some of your nightmares?
I can't remember. And I think they were just like bizarre and not making sense, like series of like people chasing you or people trying to hurt you or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Crazy Mormon hell dream.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get it. And apparently, too, you didn't believe that science had anything to help you with.
Well, you distrust science.
Yeah, they just completely distrust it. It's like...
Well, like she said, she distrusted the medicine, but you're also distrusting the wisdom of man to counsel you through problems that you shouldn't be having if you're filled with the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's back to being a shit. It's back to feeling terrible about yourself.
Yeah, so I think once you go through an experience like that, you don't emerge the same person.
No.
Well, how did you get out of it though? What happened?
I mean, that year, like spring came, and after like a few months, I started to feel better.
Okay.
The sun came out.
So, yeah.
The sun came out.
So that's seasonal disorder.
Yeah. And so in that case, I kind of just made myself keep going. In later times, I actually got good treatment. But like the change that was in me was like, I had experienced like pain and suffering in my past, but I had never experienced agony. Wow. And so I never took people seriously when they were like, oh, like people are starving and like people are like, I was like, oh, God is probably with them and comforting them and like maybe they'll go to heaven. But I never like really believed that like God's not there. There's not hope. God abandons people.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I went home for the summer and everyone around me was like, look, God helped me find this skirt.
Right.
It just destroyed me inside because I was like, God wouldn't give me one sign that like, or one feeling of comfort. And yet God helped you find this skirt at Walmart. Like, what?
Oh, man.
So I think that was the final thing, but it took me a long time because I kept thinking like, well, other people have gone through this and they're still Christians. So I need to like turn over every stone and figure out what they believe that helps them still do that because I can't believe in a God that is a butcher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so like I spent years, like I found a new kind of church that was like much more life-giving than my past. And I went to L'Abri twice, which Cass, you know about L'Abri, right?
Yeah.
I don't.
Francis Schaeffer's.
What's that?
It's in Switzerland, right?
There's one in Switzerland, but there's also like 6 or 7 around the world. And I went to 2 different ones in the United States.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So just Francis Schaeffer, Frank Schaeffer, the guy we had on the show, it's his dad.
His dad's L'Abri is what
L'Abri is kind of a community. I mean, it's
Christian.
Live-in community of believers, like a compound or a cult. But actually, Francis himself, I mean, he is credited with like starting the religious right, and he was the one. He's credited with pushing Christians to get involved in politics.
Oh, I didn't know
before, like today, your Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff, they won't do the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't do, they are literally don't consider themselves any kind of national association because they're aliens on this planet, et cetera, et cetera. So separatists, basically. And so he's responsible for kind of encouraging people to get in and be agents of change and
use politics as that change.
Yeah, and that would be the downside of like his message. But there was some aspects of his Christianity that were really strong, and I'm sure Jenna, you probably were attracted to some of those.
Well, L'Abri is French for the shelter. And so for me, it was a place to like go and stay for 6 weeks or whatever. And the people there are really understanding about what people go through. And since they don't know you from before, they like are able to help you like think about what you're going through and kind of reframe it.
Was that the first time that you were able to be honest about your depression?
Yeah, I would say yes.
Great.
Yeah, and I met a lot of people there that I really respected and still really respect. But my questions weren't answered.
And how recent was this?
The last time I went, I guess, was in 2009. I think like I kind of tried every way I could to stay, but I ended up just not even being able to go to a church anymore because every time I go there, I just feel these like horrible feelings and like I just can't believe that you would worship a God that is like a genocidist.
Yeah, I was going to say negligent, but you went deeper.
Yeah. No,
so,
that's very
how
true.
lonely did you get?
I've been really lonely my whole life. And I think part of it is that whole like parents as police issue. But definitely like in your deepest depression, whether you're a Christian or not, like you are the only person and you can't connect with anyone.
Yeah. How did you find our podcast?
I think you were interviewed on another podcast I was listening to, the guy who was Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah, that's Ryan Bell's Life After God.
Yeah, and I thought like, another podcast. I didn't know anything was out there. I thought I was still alone. So
yeah.
And so I found your podcast, and I think actually in the last 8 months, I feel like I went from someone who wouldn't really call themselves ex-Christian to someone who would call themselves that and is kind of like ready to move on.
Yeah. So how did you find his? I mean, I guess what I'm getting to is that there's a point in your life when your loneliness is so painful and you get on the web and you type in a Google, or, I mean, are you looking for, people that are going through the same thing, right?
I think what happened is someone from my past, we were having a conversation and I was like, yeah, I don't really think I believe in God the way I used to because of X, Y, and Z. And then she was like, I don't believe in God at all anymore. And I'm a member of these Facebook groups of lots of people that feel the same way. And maybe at some point, if you want to check them out, you should do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how I got plugged into this whole group. It took me a while. Like at first I was like, no, like I'm not ready to think about that. It's just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's scary. I mean, the atheist word is scary when you're a Christian. I mean,
Yeah.
It is. But even like when I first stopped going to church, like you lose everything.
Yeah.
I mean, like I lost all my friends, like my family, they're still my family, but they don't really trust me anymore or think my opinions have weight because I'm not a Christian. And just like I know if anything happened to my brother and sister-in-law, like they would never consider me as a caregiver because they want their kids to grow up with Christians.
Yep.
Even though like I'm their aunt and I would give them the best life, you know?
Yeah.
So they're in Brooklyn. Are you a part of, I mean, do they have like a Sunday assembly or is there a free thinkers meetup or you have any community?
Not in like, I don't know a lot of like ex-Christians in any organized way, although I've thought about starting something. The Sunday assembly has been on hiatus because they're looking for more people to lead it. But like I've made friends and I've met some wonderful people, and through like my career change becoming a software dev, I've met like so many amazing people, and so I don't feel alone anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I was going to ask that. How you doing now?
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But I would think in New York, you're not surrounded by Christian hegemony like we are in the South and like you would be in Virginia,
Right.
to a lot of your peers just walking, I mean, just in the community, in the society, in the culture, they don't give a rat's ass about God. I mean, there's just, it's apatheism, you know, it's like, there's no God, but why are we even talking about it? And I can tell that's why you don't want to identify as somebody who doesn't believe in something, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a non-issue for a lot of your peers, especially in the computer industry. You got a lot of smart people, educated people.
I mean, like, babies are born not believing in God. Like, that's the default. And so right. I don't think that we're atheists. I think we're just normal.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, if you do want to believe in something crazy, believe that people will do the right thing. I'm really serious, because that's all we got. We got us. That's all we got. If we don't want Nazis, let's make sure there's no Nazis. You know what I mean? Let's you know.
I think I hear what you're saying is that it's sad what Jenna's saying. It's your default is just reality, and then you get hijacked by these narratives that people have superimposed on reality.
Right.
And you're saying, all right, if you're going to believe something far-fetched, or and that is believe in humanity, which can be a far-fetched, right? Because
a lot of people say every day, you look at the news, you know, that type of stuff.
Humans are a mess.
Yeah.
But
we're
yet,
all we got, man. Who else is going to do it?
And at least it's real.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I believe in you, and I believe in me, and I believe in goodness, those things exist. They also, I mean, so does evil and darkness and bad humans. But I think, what is it? A man's got to believe in something. I believe I'll have another drink.
That's right.
You know?
That's what
We're meaning-making creatures, and yet, if we can, we need to base those meanings on as much grounding in facts as possible.
Sure.
So
it's good food for thought.
It is. Yeah.
If you're going to believe in, So you work from home, or do you go to an office?
I go to an office. It's near Union Square, so I get to be in the city and kind of, like the hum of all the people around and trying restaurants and
Man, New York is great. The entertainment capital of the world. I mean, plus there's so many things to do there, and so many.
It's a great city.
Yeah, great restaurants, and man, 8 million people, or whatever it is now. But there's a lot of people around there to get to know. That's awesome.
And there's a lot of people that are in my boat. I mean, even at work, and even though like we barely ever talk about our real lives, like I've met several people that are ex-Christians.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, cool.
That's great. Cool.
So like there's a lot of us around. I think the other thing is like New York has really come up as a city with a bike culture, and there's tons of bike lanes. Like I can ride to work almost all in like separated bike lanes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, what about just sharing your life with another person? Another partner, man, woman, who cares? But whatever. Nothing like that yet, or are you working on it?
Well, so when I was like 25, I was like, man, so I have to like wait for someone else, and like so much depends on that for them. Like I have to just like be coy and like, And I was like, I'm not about that. Like it's my life, and if I want to have a boyfriend, then like I'm going to take initiative to make that happen.
Yeah. Okay. And did you?
Yeah. And so I started dating, and now I'm dating a really wonderful person, and really enjoying it.
Oh, good. It's just great to share your life with somebody else. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, go see a movie, talk about it, have some fun, laugh. You know, it's why deprive yourself of that good thing? It's terrific.
But what I hear in that is that at age 25, she's starting to spread her wings and do things for herself.
Yeah.
At 25,
exactly.
And here she is. We're only, 7 years into the formation and the emergence of Ginna.
Yeah,
and how it got, arrested development.
Absolutely, and like the consequences of growing up the way that I and a lot of other people grew up, like they echo long into your adulthood. Like I'm lucky that.
Oh yeah.
I have a job I like, especially as a woman, because I was raised to be a full-time homemaker.
Yeah.
Like I'm lucky about that. I'm lucky that I've been able to date people. A lot of people haven't dated at my age if they grew up the way, we grew up. And I don't know, like I feel like a really late bloomer, but I also feel like really lucky.
Well, this goes back to the original irony that you pointed out, Jenna, that as a child you were expected to grow up fast, and yet here we are talking about late blooming.
Yeah.
Sure.
The irony. Gosh. Yeah.
So I was about to say, how do you get to work? You said bicycle. And what about recreation? What do you do on the weekends? What do you do for fun?
Oh, man. So I just actually moved to Brooklyn. I used to live in Queens. And so like apartments are really expensive here. So this is my first time really living alone. And I have like been having a ball just like putting my stuff out and like rearranging things and like doing all that stuff. Mm-hmm. A few friends have visited me and we've cooked together. I love to cook. And I don't know. I think I have a more quiet life than a lot of New Yorkers, but I really enjoy it.
Well, that's what's important.
Man, absolutely.
Do you have any tattoos?
No tattoos.
Do you have any intention of getting some?
No.
Okay. What's something unique about you?
Why would you want to know that? Just because?
I'm just throwing it out.
Just throwing it out. Okay. Just wondering.
Left field questions are great, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you find things you go, what? Okay.
What are you reading right now?
So I'm reading Marlene Wynell's book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She's great. She was on the show.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Oh, really?
Leaving the Fold.
Leaving the Fold.
Yes.
Yeah, she was probably in the first 40 episodes of this show.
Yeah, she's terrific. People really like her. We should get her back, see what she's up to.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about movies or TV shows or anything like that? Do you like to go out and stage plays?
Or stay in and chill on Netflix?
Netflix and chill?
Oh, man. So I'm in love with the show Parks and Rec, and I've probably watched the entire thing through like 3 times.
Yeah. My wife loves Parks and Rec, yeah.
Yeah.
Amy Poehler is one of her favorites. Have you read her book by chance?
Not yet. I'm interested.
Oh, yeah. Totally a fantastic book.
Good book. Yeah. You'd like it.
Okay. I'll check that out.
We have it on audio. I mean, part of the reason I started a podcast is that I have an hour-long commute to work one way and back every day, 5 days a week. And so I listen to a lot of stuff, and so we get a lot of things on audio. And whenever an audio book is read by the author, it makes it even better. Yeah. And Amy reads her own book, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, good book.
A lot of laughs.
That's great. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you wrote about, a couple of things in that kind of bridge building, I think there is a chasm between the atheist world and the theist world, and people like ourselves who have basically been in both worlds and understand the language of both worlds, that we can maybe play a role in stretching the culture to be more accommodating to people outside the tribe. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that Christians have a really different language. And I notice a lot that people who haven't been Christians before really talk past Christians and say all the buzzwords that Christians interpret as really negative.
Oh, what are those buzzwords?
Oh, well, like when you said earlier, like lots of rules, that's like a stereotypical non-Christian thing to say, that Christians would be like, oh, you're just not cut out for it. You're just not willing to make the sacrifices.
Okay.
Interesting.
Or politically, like when people say, just the word global warming, Christians just associate like 10 million things with that instead of saying like, yeah, we need to be better stewards of our environment, which is something Christians would think is really positive.
Okay. Wow, you got to speak in code almost, don't you?
I just think that like we have a special ability to couch things in a way that is going to appeal to both sides. And I think that's like a superpower that we have. Like no one else has this because no one else has been in both worlds.
Yeah.
I actually have a recommendation for you, Cass.
Okay.
So do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I do.
Okay, so Love and Radio podcast did an episode where they interviewed Daryl Davis.
Okay.
He's an African-American guy who has interviewed and befriended a bunch of men in the KKK and actually gotten them to leave it.
Yep. Yeah. I'm familiar with him, and my son is a huge listener and documentary watcher.
Yeah.
And he recommended that one to me as well. So for sure.
Yeah.
You talk about a bridge builder. Yeah, right.
So Love and Radio, there's 2 1-hour episodes that interview him. And the second one is called How to Argue.
Okay.
And he like can sit down with someone who can say like, you're inferior. We want separation of the races. Your race should not be marrying white people. And of course, Daryl Davis's wife is white. And he can sit with those people and like totally listen to and respect them while completely disagreeing with what they're saying. But like he doesn't allow himself to feel threatened or to have like a sort of like defensive reaction.
Right.
He just says, oh, well, why do you think that? And then when they say more, he says, oh, well, that fact's not true. Or like, actually, here's the real story. And he engages them in dialogues that'll last like, you know, years because they become friends. And like, I don't know. I think that's definitely what's lacking for me because I just blow up and get angry so quickly. And, you know, am defensive and don't know all the facts and haven't researched everything beforehand before I talk to someone that I really disagree with.
Right.
I get you.
Well, this is a big deal right now because we're all feeling the chasm, the two Americas. And, you know, I was noticing that there's almost a civil war going on within Christianity about Trump.
Absolutely.
And obviously there's one outside, you know, and there's chasms and factions and sects like just splitting at the seams of this country right now. And a guy like Daryl Davis comes along and models this. This is really, really needed right now.
Right.
In order for us to somehow ride this storm out and come out on the other side in some kind of cohesive nation. And you know, we talk about it all the time on the show, and that's the sense of connectedness is very, very important. And we are miles from where we need to be in order to, you know, have a healthy stance towards people different than ourselves.
We really are. I think we jump to being defensive way too fast.
Sure.
And then we jump from there to disrespecting the person instead of disagreeing with what they're saying.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I kind of go back to self-love. I think when a person is the more insecure a person is, the faster they are to get defensive. And when you're comfortable in your own skin, you're comfortable in your own beliefs, and you're comfortable with being wrong occasionally. Like you're actually intrigued with being corrected. Like you're curious. And I think whenever somebody like Daryl Davis or a good person that is good at conflict resolution, curiosity is a prerequisite. You actually have to listen and care and maybe even be interested, imagine that, in what your opponent, if you're going to use that word or whatever, your partner in this conversation is saying. So those are some big deals. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time you heard people debating and one of the people says, really? I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I need to go read up more on that.
Yeah. No, I think that's in fact, it's so cool. Like if that were to happen and somebody presents an argument and then it gets to the other person's time to counter argument, you know, they say more. And they cede their time to their opponent.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that be like a touche? That's almost like one of those karate moves where you let the fist go by or something. I don't know.
That's good.
All right. What about pets? You got any pets?
I really want to get a cat at some point. Yeah. Again, in New York, most apartments don't allow pets.
Yeah.
But my current one does. So maybe I can get a kitten.
And what would you name it?
Oh, no idea. Probably something really like basic, like Kitty Kit or something.
Oh, Kitty Kit.
Something really original. Now you got to come up with something.
Yeah.
So what's your vice on the computer?
Definitely Facebook.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time on Facebook. Yeah, that's cool.
I'm actually like a member of a couple of ex-Christian pages.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because so many of them have like lost all their friends, or they lost their spouse and their kids.
Yeah.
Or
Wow.
they've just lost everything. And so there's actually a lot of people who are on there all the time because they're trying to figure out like how to rebuild their life. Exactly.
Yeah. That's the community that we've built with, there's a couple of Facebook pages that are everyone's agnostic support groups. So there's one that's local here in Middle Tennessee where we actually physically meet together once a month. And then there's one that's more the international community. And that's exactly what's going on. It's happening all over. I mean, Recovering from Religion, Life After God, the Clergy Project, Everyone's Agnostic. We are all doing and helping people that are recovering from religion and traumatized or, having to rebuild, and How Now Shall I Live, which is actually the name of a Francis Schaeffer book. But, having to figure out, who am I and what do I want? And the bottom falls out of your life. This is what we do here on this show over and over again, week after week.
Yeah, and at some point, I'd love to know more about what format you use for your support group, because I'm thinking maybe we need some support groups like that around here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you real quick is that we get together once a month at somebody's house.
Mm-hmm.
And the first hour, we kind of meet at 6. It's usually on a Saturday night or something, but we move it around because we have several musicians in the Nashville area who are out on weekends and out of town. The first hour from 6 to 7 is just a gather and socialize, and people bring finger food or appetizers, and we'll have cocktails for those that drink or whatever, and we'll just schmooze for an hour, and then right at 7. Like clockwork, and I mean pretty strict, we sit down in a circle, living room or wherever we can, and I take 60 minutes and I divide it by the number of people in the room. Mm-hmm. And so if it's 12 people, that's 5 minutes. And so I'll literally set a timer on my phone, probably more like for 4 minutes, so that there's some buffer. Yeah. And people, almost like a 12-step group, people get a chance to, this is their time. Nobody can interrupt. Nobody can ask questions. Nobody can say anything. It's just their time to say whatever they want. They can pass their time, or they can say, this is how I'm feeling, this is how my week's going, or this is what's on my mind. And so when the timer goes off, though, they have to wrap it up. And then the next person goes. And it gives the people in the group at least the feeling that I'm eventually going to get my time. And then, so by 8 o'clock, everybody has shared. We take a break, potty break, refill your plate, refill your drink, and then we come back to that circle, and now it's open forum where we can discuss anything we want, but probably what comes up is stuff that was mentioned during the check-in.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Because during check-in, you're not allowed to discuss it. And yet when somebody brought that up, it's like, I want to discuss that further. I want to hear more on that or whatever. Yeah. So the 8 o'clock hour is open discussion, no timers, and you can talk about whatever you want. And then at 9, it's basically the meeting's over, and, usually people linger sometimes till midnight, just hanging out.
Yeah.
And this particular group here in in Middle Tennessee, Nashville area, turns out is the most beautiful group of people. They're educated, they're sharp, they're thoughtful, they're compassionate, they're broken. It's not a pity party. It's not like the common thread is poor us. But it is something that we have shared in that very few people understand. And so there is this deep, deep bond that is just very, very meaningful to everybody in the group. The people in this group love this group, and they love each other. And so the reason we only meet monthly is because throughout the rest of the month, people are going out to dinner, going to see a movie. I mean, they're doing impromptu and ad lib things just on the fly, and so relationship building is going on the whole month. But the organized meeting is just once a month. That's what we're doing now, and it's working for us, and everybody in the group just loves it.
Yeah.
Oh man, that sounds amazing.
It really is. I mean, we feel lucky, and we have people out that are so remote. They don't know one person in their current life, in their real life, that they can talk to and they can relate to. So like what you're experiencing on some of these Facebook sites is that it's where they go to, connect. That
totally makes sense, because I think as a young person and just building my life, being able to move to a different city where there's tons of people that agree with me is huge. And I don't know how I would have left Christianity if I had to stay in the same area.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, me too. I mean, I left Oklahoma. It was a part of my deconstruction is I kind of had to go somewhere where I was not Cass Midgley preacher of Oklahoma. You know what I mean?
So you weren't like a pastor since you've been in Tennessee?
No, yeah. I left when I first moved here. I was still a Christian. I just wasn't fully deconstructed, and so I started leading music in churches and things like that. I was involved when I first got here, but it was all falling apart very fast, and it wasn't long before I left it altogether. Well, I say it wasn't long. It was probably 5 years after I moved here is when I really said I'm an atheist.
Yeah, it really takes time. It's not an overnight thing. I mean, maybe for someone it is, but
Yeah, no. Not for folks like you and Cass, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's just too deep. So you're feeling pretty good now then? What do you think, Jenna? Okay? Things are going in the right direction?
I think things are going in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. Well, you sound good, and you sound like you've done a lot of the hard work.
Yeah.
Did you end up seeing a therapist that you could actually be honest with eventually?
Yeah, there definitely came a point when, I had finished college and I had my own job and stuff where I was like, wow, my parents can't find out about this. And so I can say whatever I want.
Yeah.
And so that's been a good thing. I think, I don't know, it's really difficult to find a therapist who doesn't think that your entire past is like really funny.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Because they're just like, how do people believe that? Or like, what a bunch of assholes. And you're like, but they're my family and my friends, so you can't really say that about them.
Yeah, you need a different therapist, that's for sure. Usually good ones will not do that.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
They would be much more objective.
More objective, more, and respect you a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think you go through a few therapists and then you're like, all right, I need to keep looking and find a good person. And so I've done that and that's been great.
Yeah. Good news.
Well, thanks for sharing your story. You got anything you want to say to put a bow on it?
That's it. I think just it's an ever continuing process. And I don't know if people are listening, like they're not alone. There's a lot of other people going through it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you were brave enough to come on. And I think, like Bob said, I think you sound like you're on a good trajectory. In the absence of maybe what your father might say to you, can I tell you that I'm proud of you?
Thank you.
Yeah, you sound like a good person.
Thanks so much. Thank you guys both for letting me be on the show.
Jenna.
Exactly.
She decided not to use her last name just to protect the family or whatever.
I get that. But boy, Straightjacket keeps coming back to me, just that emotional straitjacket. What a terrible way to live a life. My gosh.
This phenomena of being raised Christian, and especially fundamentalist and radical and serious, where you literally believe in the rapture.
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of Christians in this country that are just social Christians. They go to Easter and Christmas, or they hold it because it's actually the normal thing to be in America is Christian.
Yeah, right.
But they don't buy into the literalness of a lot of this stuff. 6-day creation, young earth, or literal resurrection and virgin birth, and literal God could come back at any time, and literal heaven and hell.
Yeah, sure.
So it's only the people that take the Bible literal and canonized, serious God's word. This is not the authorship of men. This is God talking, and like it or not, you can't judge it because this is the way it is, and you either get on the right side of God or you're shit. Or you're SOL. You're fucked.
Yeah.
And it's a very serious, high tense thing, and well-meaning parents subject their kids to this because it's high importance to raise your kids in the fear and admonition of the Lord. It's hard to get inside the head, even now, 10 years out as an atheist or whatever, just trying to get back inside. We were never really that staunch. It sounds like Jenna's journey was pretty darn serious when it comes to the rapture and going back to what she said about a little savage, and how the parents feel the impetus to purge this person of their lower nature, of their sin. And,
or just being a kid, which is crazy.
Well, that's
shit.
The kid goes out with the bathwater. In a way, when you purge a human of a big chunk of their nature, which is just freedom and the freedom to sin and the freedom to make mistakes, even lying. She's saying, like, look, there's a stage. psychologically, where a kid tries his or her wings verbally or thought, like, learning. Do people know what I'm thinking? And then they try it.
Yeah.
And they lie. And the actual, the person believes them. And that is a revelation that I think what Jenna is supporting is that psychologists would say is kind of a stage.
Yeah, it's like an individuation or something.
Yeah, where you figure out that you can lie and get away with it.
Yeah.
And then you need to...
For a while. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And then, exactly. You make adjustments.
The lack of boundaries, the fear of the rapture, the fact that her parents, being the police, kind of drove a wedge between that which should be intimate, and then not feeling that you could ever talk to them about your real feelings, especially her depression.
Yeah, that was bad.
When you're a Christian, just world hypothesis, or things are supposed to be a certain way,
right?
And when you come with a presentation that counters that image that they have in their mind of how things should be,
right,
then you can't tell them because they can't handle the truth. And this is the loneliness that she was feeling from the people that really are, in your life to be the most helpful and intimate and hold your hand and show you the path.
Right.
She didn't have that. And so she's really, I think what we witnessed and are witnessing, as she said, a work in progress, is Jenna finding her own path.
Right.
She didn't get it. She didn't get it from her parents. She got the opposite. She's having to overcome and detox from what she got from her parents.
And it took a while. 25, she says,
Well, yeah, and even now at 32, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, right. Well, good for her. You got to start. Take that first step.
Yeah.
No matter what. Take it. Wow. Interesting stories. Always good stories.
Hard. Sometimes they come away and I'm just like, wow, we really... I waffle back and forth about how bad I hate Christianity, Yeah. And a show like this makes you really go, shit, we've got to put a stop to this. This has got to stop.
If you love people and you care about them, you don't want to see them go through this.
Yeah.
You wouldn't certainly want to go through it yourself, so why would you want others,
Well, I've been accused of being an evangelist for atheism, and at this, circumstances like this, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, she talked about how a friend of hers said, hey, I don't believe either, and here's these support groups.
Yeah.
And she turned her on to Life After God, and then she heard my show and my episode with Ryan and came over and started listening to us too. And yeah, I guarantee you, we are oiling the wheels of deconversion, and we're proud to be so.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we should do it again. How about next week?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, thanks, guys.